The small blue hands of Lyra shook as she scrubbed the stone floor. Her 4 arms worked together, but even with twice as many limbs as most species, she could not keep up with the endless work. The young bright-skinned girl was only 12 cycles old, but she had lived 7 of those cycles as a slave in the house of Trader Morsk. Lyra's skin gave off a faint glow in the dim room. All bright skins could control their natural light, but hers stayed dim now. Bright skin meant happy feelings, and Lyra had few of those. "Hurry, little pest," the voice of Trader Morsk boomed from the doorway. The large Dravian's gray skin was covered in expensive clothes and jewels. "The trade meeting starts soon, and this floor is still dirty." Lyra bowed her head. "Yes, Master Morsk. I will finish quickly." Morsk walked closer. His heavy steps made the floor shake. "You said that an hour ago. Perhaps you need help remembering your place." Lyra's neck tingled where the metal collar sat against her skin. She knew what would happen next. Morsk pulled out a small control device from his pocket and pressed a button. Pain shot through Lyra's body. The neural collar sent signals directly to her nerves. She fell to the wet floor, all 4 arms pulling tight against her body. She did not scream. Screaming only made the punishment last longer. "That should help you work faster," Morsk said, putting the control away. "When I return, this room must be perfect. The human traders are coming, and they are new to this part of space. I want to impress them." After Morsk left, Lyra slowly got back to her knees. Her body still hurt, but she had learned to push through pain. The collar was the worst part of her life here. It made escape impossible. Lyra remembered little of her home planet now. She had been only 5 cycles old when the raiders came. She remembered her mother's glowing skin, bright with love as she hid Lyra in a small hole beneath their home. She remembered the screams, the fires, and being pulled from her hiding place by rough hands. After that came the cages, the auction blocks, and finally, the House of Morsk on the trade planet Nexus. For 7 cycles, she had known nothing but work and pain. Lyra finished cleaning the floor and moved to the windows. As she cleaned the glass, she could see ships coming and going from the spaceport. So many different species passed through Nexus. Some were kind, some were cruel, but none ever questioned why children like her wore neural collars and worked until they dropped from tired. "It's just how things are," she whispered to herself, words she had heard many times when new slaves cried about their fate. Night came, and the house finally grew quiet. Lyra crept to her small sleeping space, a closet with a thin mat on the floor. But she did not sleep right away. Instead, she opened a tiny panel in the wall that she had discovered years ago. Through this secret opening, she could see the night sky. The stars shined bright and clear. Lyra's skin gave off a slightly brighter glow as she watched them. "Mother said there are kind people among the stars," she whispered. "She said some species believe all people should be free." It was hard to believe such stories now. In her experience, people were cruel or, at best, didn't care about the suffering of others. But still, each night, she looked at the stars and tried to remember hope. Tomorrow would bring more work, more fear, and likely more pain. But for these few moments in the dark, watching the stars through her secret window, Lyra allowed her skin to glow just a little brighter. She didn't know that tomorrow a ship would arrive carrying beings from a distant planet called Earth, and that everything was about to change. The trading hall buzzed with voices. Beings from 20 different worlds moved around, making deals and arguing prices. Lyra stayed close to the wall, trying to be invisible as she carried a tray of drinks. "Find Trader Morsk," ordered the house manager, pushing Lyra toward the crowd. "He needs these drinks for his special guests." Lyra's skin dimmed even more as she carefully walked through the crowd. Her master was easy to spot. His large Dravian form towered over most traders. He stood with a group of beings Lyra had never seen before. They looked strange. They had only 2 arms and no obvious natural weapons. Their skin came in different shades of brown, pink, and black, but none of them glowed. They were covered in colorful clothes that seemed made for comfort rather than show. "Ah, finally," Morsk said when he saw Lyra. "Captain Jack, these drinks are a special blend from my home planet." One of the strange beings stepped forward. He was tall for his kind, with dark hair on his face around his mouth and on top of his head. His eyes were a deep brown that reminded Lyra of the warm soil from the garden. "Thank you," the being called Jack said, taking a cup from her tray. When their fingers briefly touched, Lyra was surprised by how warm his skin felt. Morsk made a sound of annoyance. "The creature is just a slave, Captain. No need for pleasantries." The human called Jack looked at Lyra directly, something most beings never did with slaves. His eyes narrowed slightly. "On Earth, we thank people who bring us things," he said simply. "It's our custom." "How quaint," Morsk laughed. "But surely on your world you have servants." Jack sipped his drink before answering. "We have people who work for us, yes. But they choose their jobs and get paid for their work." The conversation moved to trade matters. Lyra stayed nearby, refilling cups when needed. She listened carefully. These humans were new trading partners. They had technology that many species wanted, especially something called efficient fusion drives. As the meeting went on, Lyra noticed that Captain Jack kept glancing at her and the other slaves. His face made small changes that she couldn't understand. Was he angry? Sad? Disgusted? She couldn't tell. "We should celebrate our new partnership," Morsk announced. "Captain Jack and his crew will join us for a feast tonight." Later that evening, Lyra helped prepare the dining hall. The humans arrived wearing clean, bright clothes. Captain Jack seemed to watch everything closely. During the meal, Lyra was ordered to serve drinks again. The cup of sweet fermented juice was heavy, and as she reached across to fill a glass, her arm bumped into a plate. The plate hit a cup, which spilled purple liquid all over the table. "Clumsy pest," Morsk hissed, pulling out his control device. Before Lyra could even apologize, her neural collar activated. She fell to her knees, the pain making her drop the pitcher. It shattered on the floor. Through the haze of pain, Lyra heard a chair scrape back. Then a strong voice cut through the room. "Stop that immediately." It was Captain Jack. He had stood up from his chair. Morsk looked surprised. "It's just discipline for a clumsy slave." "It was my fault," Jack said firmly. "I moved without looking. You're hurting her for something I caused." The room went silent. No one ever defended a slave. Morsk stared at the human, then slowly lowered the control device. The pain stopped, and Lyra gasped for air. "Of course, Captain," Morsk said with a forced smile. "A simple misunderstanding." As Lyra cleaned up the broken glass, she felt the human watching her. When she dared to glance up, his eyes met hers. He gave a small nod, just a tiny movement of his head. In that moment, something changed inside Lyra. For the first time in 7 cycles, someone had seen her pain and thought it was wrong. Her skin brightened just slightly, a tiny glow of something she had almost forgotten. Hope. 3 days passed since the dinner. Captain Jack had come back to Trader Morsk's house many times. He always said it was for business, but Lyra noticed how his eyes followed her when he thought no one was looking. On the 4th day, Lyra was working in the garden when she heard footsteps. She looked up to see Captain Jack walking toward her. She quickly lowered her head and continued pulling weeds. "Hello there," Jack said, his voice soft. "I was told I could find some nice plants out here." Lyra kept her eyes down. "Yes, sir. Master Morsk grows many rare plants. I can show you." "That would be nice," Jack said, looking around to make sure they were alone. "What's your name?" Lyra's head snapped up in surprise. No one had asked her name in years. Most people just called her Slave or you. "I'm Lyra," she said quietly. "I'm Jack," he replied with a small smile. "Nice to meet you properly, Lyra." He walked beside her as she showed him different plants. When they reached a tall bush with thick leaves that would hide them from the house, Jack stopped. "Listen, I don't have much time," he said, his voice even quieter. "I wanted to talk to you." "About what, sir?" Lyra asked, confused. "About that collar on your neck," Jack said, pointing. "And about the way Morsk treats you. On Earth, where I come from, we don't keep slaves." Lyra blinked in surprise. "No slaves? But who does all the work?" "People do work, but they choose their jobs. They get paid with money they can spend however they want. Children your age go to school to learn things." School. Lyra had heard of such places, but had never been to one. Yes, children learn about science, art, history, and many other things until they're old enough to choose their own path. Jack knelt down so he was at her eye level. "What happened to you? Being taken from your home, being forced to work, being hurt when you make mistakes. Where I come from, these things are very wrong." Lyra didn't know what to say. The idea seemed impossible. "I've been coming back here with excuses," Jack continued, "but really, I wanted to find out more about you and the other slaves." "Why?" Lyra asked. "Because I want to help," Jack said simply. Lyra's skin flickered brighter for a moment before she controlled it. "No one can help." The collar. She touched the metal band around her neck. "It will hurt me if I try to leave, and it will kill me if I go too far from Master Morsk's control device." Jack nodded. "I thought it might work that way. We have technology that might disable it, but I need to get you to my ship first." "Impossible," Lyra whispered. "Slaves who try to escape are killed as examples. Master Morsk boasted that he has killed 12 who tried." Jack's face changed, his mouth turning down and his eyes narrowing. "That's not going to happen to you." "Sir, you should be careful," Lyra warned. "If Master Morsk hears you talking like this." "I know," Jack sighed. "Look, I have to go back to my ship today, but I'll return tomorrow. Can you meet me here again?" Lyra nodded slowly. Over the next few days, Jack found ways to talk to Lyra. Sometimes in the garden, sometimes when she was sent to clean his guest quarters. He told her about Earth and asked about her people, the bright skins. "My people are peaceful," she explained. "We farm and make beautiful light shows with our skin. We have festivals where everyone glows together to make patterns in the dark." "I'd like to see that someday," Jack said. "It will never happen," Lyra said sadly. "The raiders took so many of us. Our numbers are too small now." Jack's face grew serious. "Lyra, I promise you this. I will find a way to get you out of here. Humans might not be the strongest or fastest species in the galaxy, but we are stubborn. When we see something wrong, we don't stop until it's fixed." For the first time in years, Lyra let her skin glow brightly, lighting up the dark corner where they talked. "I believe you," she whispered. "The plan will work," Jack whispered. They were hidden behind the storage shelves in Morsk's supply room. "My ship leaves tomorrow. During the loading of trade goods, you will hide in this crate." He pointed to a large container marked with Earth symbols. Lyra's skin pulsed with nervous light. "The collar. I have a device that might block its signal long enough," Jack explained, showing her a small metal box. "It won't remove the collar, but it should stop it from hurting you until we're safely away." Lyra touched the box with one of her 4 hands. "And then I'll be free." Jack nodded. "My people have experts who can safely remove the collar. Then you can decide what you want to do with your life." The idea seemed too wonderful to believe. "What about the other slaves?" Lyra asked. Jack's face grew serious. "I wish I could help everyone now. But I don't have enough resources. Once you're safe, I promise we'll work to help others. My people will not ignore this once they know." Lyra understood. One small step first, then bigger ones later. "Tomorrow, when the big clock shows midday, find a way to come to the loading area," Jack instructed. "I'll have the crate ready. The blocking device should work for about 30 minutes, enough time to get you on board and my ship away from the port." "I'll be there," Lyra promised, her skin glowing with hope. The next day moved slowly. Lyra did her chores while watching the clock. Her four hands worked quickly, finishing everything so no one would look for her. When midday approached, she slipped away toward the loading area. The spaceport was busy. Workers moved goods between ships and warehouses. Lyra stayed hidden, watching for Jack's Earth ship. She spotted it, a sleek vessel with the words "Freedom Trader" painted on its side. Jack stood near a line of crates, checking items on a small screen. He didn't see her yet. Lyra took a deep breath and moved from her hiding place. She was halfway across the open area when she heard Morsk's angry voice. "Where is that useless slave?" He shouted into a communication device. "She's not answering her collar call." Lyra froze. She had forgotten that Morsk could use the collar to summon her. She looked toward Jack, who had now spotted her. His eyes widened in alarm. "Run," he mouthed silently, waving her forward. Lyra ran, all four arms pumping as she sprinted toward the Earth ship. Jack moved to meet her, the blocking device ready in his hand. They were just 10 steps apart when Lyra's world exploded in pain. The collar activated, sending burning agony through her body. She fell to the ground, her limbs shaking. Through tear-filled eyes, she saw Jack running toward her. "Stop right there, human." Morsk's voice boomed across the loading area. He appeared with 4 security guards, all holding weapons. "That is my property you're trying to steal." Jack stopped, looking from Lyra to the armed guards. "She's not property. She's a person. Your strange human ideas don't matter here," Morsk growled. "Step away or my guards will fire." Jack's hands clenched into fists. "You can't do this." "I already have," Morsk said, pressing another button. The pain in Lyra's collar increased, making her scream. "Stop," Jack shouted. "You're killing her." "Then back away," Morsk demanded. The pain was too much. Lyra felt darkness coming. Through the haze, she heard Jack's voice. "This isn't over," he said to Morsk. Then, softer, to her, "I will come back for you, Lyra. I promise." The last thing she saw before losing consciousness was Jack being forced back to his ship by the guards. When Lyra woke up, she was in a cold metal room. Her collar had a new, heavier lock on it. A strange alien worker stood over her. "Welcome to the moon mines, little slave," the worker said. "Your master sold you to us after your escape attempt. No one escapes from here." Lyra's skin went completely dark, not a single point of light showing. Hope, she decided, was too painful to hold on to anymore. 3 months passed in the darkness of the moon mines. Lyra's once slender body had grown thin and weak. Her skin barely glowed anymore, even when she tried. The mine owners worked their slaves until they dropped, replacing those who died with new ones from the slave markets. Each day, Lyra dug for rare minerals in narrow tunnels where larger species couldn't fit. Her 4 arms were useful for this work, though 2 of them had been injured and never properly healed. The neural collar stayed locked around her neck, now with an added tracking device that monitored her location at all times. "Move faster, bright skin," shouted a guard, striking the wall next to her head. "Your section needs to meet its quota today." Lyra nodded silently and kept digging. She had learned not to speak unless spoken to. Words took energy, and she needed all her strength to survive. That evening, as the slaves were marched back to their sleeping quarters, Lyra noticed a new maintenance worker fixing a light panel. There was something familiar about the way he moved, but she couldn't see his face behind the breathing mask that all surface workers wore in the thin moon atmosphere. The next day, the same worker was fixing something near her tunnel entrance. As Lyra walked past with her load of minerals, she dropped some small rocks. When she bent to pick them up, the worker moved closer. "Don't react," a voice whispered. "Keep your face down." Lyra's heart jumped. That voice, it couldn't be Jack. She breathed, so quietly that even she barely heard it. "Yes, I've come back, just like I promised. But don't look at me. They can't know I'm here." Lyra kept her head down, pretending to gather the spilled rocks. "How did you?" "No time to explain now," Jack whispered. I've been working here for 2 weeks, learning the systems. 3 days from now, be ready. Ready for what? Freedom, Jack said simply. Then the guard shouted for Lyra to hurry up, and she had to move away. For 3 days, Lyra saw Jack working around the mine. Each time, he was in a different area, always busy with tools and equipment. He never spoke to her again, but sometimes he would make a small gesture when no one was looking. A nod, a thumbs up, a quick smile behind his mask. On the 3rd day, Lyra was deep in a tunnel when all the lights suddenly went out. Emergency lights came on, bathing everything in red glow. Then came an announcement over the speakers. Attention all personnel. Central control system failure. Neural collar control offline. Security breach in Section 5. Around her, other slaves stopped working. They touched their collars in disbelief. Without the central system, the collars couldn't deliver punishment. Some slaves started to whisper excitedly to each other. "What's happening?" asked a young slave next to Lyra. Before she could answer, Jack appeared at the tunnel entrance. He had removed his mask, and his face was now visible. He held a strange tool in his hand. "Lyra, come quickly," he called. "We don't have much time." Lyra ran to him. Jack placed the tool against her collar, and it made a high-pitched sound. The collar clicked open and fell to the ground. "You're free," Jack said, smiling. Lyra touched her bare neck in wonder. Her skin began to glow brighter than it had in months. "The others," she said, looking back at the confused slaves. Jack nodded. "I didn't just come for you." He showed her a bag full of collar-opening tools. "I came prepared this time." "But the guards are busy with a little surprise I left in the main control room," Jack grinned. "And my ship isn't alone this time. I brought friends." As if on cue, the sound of alarms grew louder. Announcements about unauthorized ships landing near the mine echoed through the tunnels. "We need to hurry," Jack said, handing Lyra some of the collar-opening tools. "Can you help free the others in this section while I take care of the next tunnel?" For the first time in 3 months, Lyra smiled. Her skin glowed with bright, pulsing light. "Yes," she said, standing taller. "I can help." Chaos filled the mining facility. Guards ran in all directions, unsure what to do now that the neural collars no longer worked. Alarms blared as Lyra and Jack moved through the tunnels, freeing every slave they found. "How many more?" Lyra asked, using her 4 arms to quickly remove collars from a group of young slaves. "Hundreds," Jack replied, checking the small device on his wrist. "But we have help now." Through a window, Lyra saw 3 ships landing on the moon's surface. They weren't large military vessels, but normal trading ships. People emerged wearing spacesuits, carrying more collar removal tools. "Friends of yours?" Lyra asked. Jack nodded. "Other human traders. When I told them what was happening here, they volunteered to help. Humans hate slavery." One of the freed slaves, a tall being with scaled skin, approached them. "The guards are regrouping at the main entrance. They have weapons." Jack didn't look worried. "So do we." He opened a hidden panel in the wall and pulled out a crate. Inside were simple weapons, stun batons, shield devices, and net launchers. "I've been hiding these for weeks," Jack explained, handing them out to the stronger slaves. "We don't want to kill anyone, just escape." A voice came through Jack's communication device. "Captain, this is the Phoenix. We're at Entrance B, heavy resistance. Need backup." "On our way," Jack replied. To Lyra, he said, "Stay here and continue freeing others." Lyra shook her head. "I'm coming with you." Jack looked like he might argue, but then he smiled. "You've grown braver." "I learned from you," Lyra said, her skin glowing with determination. They ran through the tunnels toward Entrance B, gathering more freed slaves as they went. By the time they reached the entrance, they were 50 strong. Outside, Lyra saw a group of humans using shield devices to protect themselves from guard weapons. "Now," Jack shouted, and their group charged forward. The guards were caught between two groups and quickly overwhelmed, not by strength or better weapons, but by sheer numbers and determination. The slaves who had been beaten down for years now fought with the power of hope. Lyra used her small size to slip past the guards and open the door controls, allowing more slaves to pour out toward the waiting ships. Jack fought at the front, using a stun baton to disable guards without killing them. "This way," he called to the freed slaves. "The ships can take everyone." A large guard suddenly appeared, pointing a weapon at Jack's back. Without thinking, Lyra leaped forward, all four arms grabbing the guard's weapon and pushing it upward. The shot missed Jack, hitting the ceiling instead. Jack turned and helped Lyra subdue the guard. "Thank you," he said. "You saved my life." "We save each other," Lyra replied. More humans arrived from the ships, bringing medical supplies for injured slaves. Lyra was amazed by how organized they were. They had clearly planned this rescue carefully. "Captain Jack," called one of the humans. "The facility director is calling. He's threatening to notify the Planetary Defense Forces." Jack took the communication device. "Listen carefully," he said to the director. "We have evidence of what's happening in these mines. If you call for help, we'll make sure every species in this sector knows about it. Or you can let us leave with these people, and we'll be gone before anyone knows what happened." There was a long pause. Then the director's angry voice. "Take them and go. But if you ever return—" "Oh, I'll be back," Jack promised, "with more ships next time." Within an hour, all the freed slaves were loaded onto the 3 human ships. Lyra stood at a window, watching the mining facility grow smaller as they flew away. "Where will we all go?" she asked Jack, who stood beside her. "To human space first," he answered, "where you'll be recognized as refugees, not property. After that, it's your choice." Lyra looked around at the hundreds of freed beings, all with their collars gone, many glowing or showing other signs of happiness in their own ways. This isn't just an escape, she realized. It's the beginning of something bigger. Jack nodded. The beginning of the end of slavery in this sector. 5 years passed. Lyra stood before a large window on a space station orbiting her home planet, Lumina. At 17 cycles old, she had grown taller, though she would always be small compared to humans. Her skin glowed with healthy light that shifted in gentle patterns across her 4 arms. "Ready for the ceremony?" Jack asked, walking up beside her. He had a few more gray hairs now, and a scar across his cheek from a battle 2 years ago. "I think so," Lyra answered, looking down at her home planet. "I never thought I would see it again." So much had changed since their escape from the moon mines. The freed slaves had been taken to human space, where they were given medical care and shelter. But Jack and Lyra hadn't stopped there. The humans had shared the evidence of slavery with the Galactic Council, forcing them to address an issue many species had ignored. Some trading groups had fought back, but the humans were stubborn. They formed the Freedom Alliance with other like-minded species. "The memorial is finished," Jack said. "They're waiting for you to speak." Lyra nodded and followed Jack to a shuttle. They flew down to the surface, landing near a large gathering of bright skins. For the first time in many years, there were enough of her people in one place to create a proper light show. In the center of the gathering stood a tall monument made of crystal. It contained the names of all bright skins who had been taken by raiders and never returned. Thousands of names, including Lyra's parents. As Lyra walked toward the speaking platform, her people's skin glowed in welcome. Children ran beside her, their light pulsing with excitement. Most had been born in the new settlements, never knowing the fear of raiders. "Thank you all for coming," Lyra began, her voice carrying across the crowd. 5 years ago, I was a slave with no hope. Today, I stand on our home soil as a free person among free people. The crowd's skin flashed in approval. Human visitors watched in wonder at the beautiful light patterns. "This memorial honors those we lost," Lyra continued. "But it also represents a new beginning. The Freedom Alliance now protects our space. Slave traders know they are not welcome here. She looked at Jack, who stood with other human representatives. I learned something important from humans. One person who refuses to accept evil can change everything. Captain Jack could have ignored what he saw. He could have said it wasn't his problem. Instead, he risked everything to help a slave girl he didn't even know. Lyra raised all 4 of her arms, and her skin brightened to its fullest glow. Now we must do the same for others. Our freedom rescue teams have freed over 10,000 slaves in the past 5 years. But many more remain in chains. The bright-skinned elders stepped forward, their skin creating complex patterns of light that told the story of their people's suffering and rebirth. Children joined in, adding their own simple patterns to the display. Jack watched with a smile. He had seen many amazing things in his travels, but the bright skin light ceremony was one of the most beautiful. After the ceremony, Lyra found him near the shuttle. The elders have approved the new rescue mission, she told him. We leave next week. You don't have to keep doing this, Jack said. You've done enough. You could stay here, have a peaceful life. Lyra's skin pulsed with gentle humor. That sounds boring. Jack laughed. You've been around humans too long. Perhaps, Lyra agreed, but I made a promise years ago. When I was freed, I promised I would help free others. Together they looked up at the stars becoming visible as darkness fell. Somewhere out there, other children waited in chains, just as Lyra once had. One more mission then, Jack said. One more, Lyra agreed, knowing they would say the same after the next mission. And the next. As night fully arrived, thousands of bright skins gathered on the planet's surface, their glowing bodies creating a beautiful pattern that could be seen from space, a beacon of hope in the darkness, showing that freedom's light could never be truly extinguished.